just because, oh, groundhog! Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, welcome, I'm glad you joined. So today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up as well as a mini book haul. Because I really don't have enough for either. I had only 3 books in the month of May because things have been crazy, and then I only have a couple of books from a couple different bookstores, so I figured I might as well just combine them to try to have something more than like a 2-minute long review. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first book that I finished in May was Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is my first Ishiguro, no, this is my second. I read The Buried Giant by him. Absolutely loved it. Fairy tale, super charming, really loved it. Clara and the Sun is a story of an automaton who is created specifically for companionship. These machines are built to be companions for kind of like younger teens, tweens, up through going into their adulthood when they go off to college is what I gather. This book does not give you background explanations. It doesn't explain the world that you're in, the automatons. You kind of pick up the information as you go along in the story, contextual clues and conversations, which I don't mind. I thought it was really well done because it's written where you're just picking up the world as you go. It does make it very real. It does make it very realistic and believable in that sense. So in this, I'm not gonna say future Earth because like there's just regular cars, people walk around the cities and stuff. There doesn't seem to be anything futuristic other than this AI technology, as well as some other advanced technology as far as like schooling and education. So there is something that they do to kids called lifting them. And if you have your child lifted when they're born or when they're very young, it kind of increases their mental abilities as far as education goes. And so pretty much everybody who goes to university has been lifted. But there are some dangers that come along with this. It's not a foolproof thing, and some parents choose not to have their kids lifted as a result. So the main character is Clara, and she is the automaton, and it's following her as she finds her person, and her goal in life and her existence is to be a companion and a comfort and a help to her girl, her human, which is Josie. Josie is kind of a sickly girl, and so she has people hovering around her and really worried about her all the time. She has a best friend who's her next door neighbor. They grew up together, so it explores the relationship between them and young love and coming of age, making medical decisions for yourself, and what those decisions, the repercussions of those decisions to accept or not accept certain procedures as you kind of age and get older. It has some really interesting ethical questions that it brings up, but it doesn't really ever fully have a conversation about them in the book. It sort of presents them as, in a future like this, these are ethical and moral dilemmas that would be faced by people, and you kind of are just left to process that and sort of come up with your own feelings about it, which I thought was really well done. It doesn't make a judgment as to good or bad on these. That's kind of left up to the reader, which I appreciated. So it was a really interesting book. I went into it knowing absolutely nothing. I just knew the author, and then I wanted to read it, and then I think this was maybe his most recent work. So I picked it up, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. I would probably say it's closer to 3.5, just because, oh, groundhog! That was so cute. I just saw it run across the neighbor's lawn. Okay, anyway, squirrel. I thought this was a really cute, charming story on the surface, but I think it had a lot of depth to it that you could choose to engage with or not. And I think that was really expertly done by the author, and so I really enjoyed it. It was very slow moving. It didn't take long. It wasn't a long period of time necessarily that it happened over, and there would be periods of time where it kind of skipped large chunks of time. So you really focused in on the bulk of the book over short periods of time and interactions between the characters that the main character is mostly observing and not necessarily being a participant in. And the whole part of Clara and the Sun is because Automata, oh my god, he's out again and he's just chubby and adorable. Oh, he's so cute. Oh my god, he's so cute. And he runs like an otter. Did you know groundhogs run like otters? They're just like leaping with, oh my god. So cute. Okay, he's gone now. If he comes back, I'll let you know. Anyway, automatons get their energy from the sun. They're basically solar powered. And so to her, to Clara, the sun is its own type of caregiver. So it also talks about some of the relationship between Clara and between her source of energy and her source of her life essence really being the sun, and how that kind of all weaves together through the lives of mostly her girl, her person Josie, and Josie's very close family and friend community. So that was a 3.5 star for me. I enjoyed it. The next book that I read was Every Shade of Happy by Phylida, Phylida, Phylida Shrimpton. I can say the last name. This book gave me all the feels. So the story is told from two perspectives. From this old ornery man who has an estranged daughter and her daughter, and it's mostly the granddaughter and the grandfather as their relationship with each other. So the mother and daughter live together, and she's a teenager, she's in high school, she's like 16 years old at the beginning of the book, and they live in the city, they have a great life, and then all of a sudden their life falls apart at the very beginning because the boyfriend of the mother decides that he is done, he wants a different relationship, he is discovering himself, and he finds out that this is not the life that he wants, and so now they don't have a place to stay. So out of desperation, the mom contacts her dad, and they have not talked since she was pregnant with her daughter, which is where the estrangement happened, and basically is like, we need a place to live, and he agrees to let them come stay with him. I have never read a book that so perfectly portrays from their own perspective the challenges in communication between generations. I hate my probably most hated book trope is miscommunication, specifically as it relates to like romance. And that it's used as a major plot point of like one really dumb miscommunication sets off the plot of an entire book or like an entire arc of a book. It drives me crazy. That would take a 20-second conversation between two moderately reasonable semi-adults to resolve, and I think it's ridiculous. This book did the miscommunication trope to absolute perfection because you're seeing from the grandfather's perspective, and then you're seeing from the granddaughter's perspective, and so you're getting why the miscommunication happened. You're getting what the person said, how they said it, what they were thinking and feeling at the time, and how they intended it, and then you're flipping to the other person's perspective on how that's being received by the body language, the tone of voice, the wording choice, the situation and the scenario that they're in, the context of the entire conversation. And it's so incredibly authentic. If for anybody who has spent a good amount of time with a grandparent, and specifically grandparents from the greatest generation, basically you're talking from like today forward, this person would be easily starting from their 80s and upward. So that time period is what I'm talking about. The communication difference is incredible, and especially between men and women from that generation. The things that men could and could not talk about and express through language, the things women could and could not talk about. And so you have possibly the most uncommunicative person because of his childhood. He had trauma of his own growing up, his life, everything all of his experiences informed him on how he does not show emotion. He does not say exactly what he means because he has trouble even processing his own thoughts and emotions. And as people get older, they have less coping skills. They have less ability to communicate properly for what they're trying to get across. It's just a part of aging that makes them less able to cope with stress and communicate very clearly what they need and want in a given situation. And then you have the perspective of a very emotional 16-year-old who is uprooted from her home, from her entire life, all of her friends, and she's now living with a grandfather she's never met. She knows that she's the reason that her grandfather and mother stopped talking because her mom got pregnant without being married. So there's a lot of tension already built in, and then you have this huge generational gap. You have this huge gap in comfort level with these people, and to see every interaction from both sides, it never gets repetitive. It's very seamless. You see the cause and effect. You don't see the cause and then you don't repeat the exact same scene, you know, from the other person's perspective and hear the same conversation over again, but you see a very fluid cause. Somebody says something in a certain way and then it immediately flips to the effect, and you see the repercussions of that. And you have such sympathy for both characters because you understand why this ornery old man said that thing in the way that he did, because he's not feeling well, and you know, he's having pain in his knees, and he's not in a place where this bubbly, bouncy, loud girl can just whirlwind into the room, and it completely upsets his balance of his day. I spent a lot of time with my grandfather towards the end of his life, and it felt so familiar. I learned very quickly dealing with my grandfather that his routine was incredibly important to his sense of well-being, and when that routine was disturbed, he had very little coping skills. He would get upset very easily. He would kind of snap at people very easily, but he never meant it. It's just he felt very insecure and unsure of things that were changing around him very quickly that he couldn't keep up with. And so I would slow down to his pace, and I had to learn his cues. But I did this as an adult. You know, this was not me as a middle teenager, 15, 16, 17, spending all my time with my grandfather and learning this. This is as an adult where I was able to be a little bit more observant and aware of things. This book made perfect sense. And as the relationship develops between the grandfather and the granddaughter, and how they start to finally understand each other, how they start to understand themselves, oh my gosh, it was so good. It was so good. I gave this 4 stars. I absolutely loved this. This gave me so many memories of my own grandfather and spending time with him, which was one of the greatest blessings of my life. And I adored this story. And the girl was a teenager. She could be a little bit annoying, just like any teenager can, but in a very realistic and sympathetic way, as she tries to figure out her own sense of identity in this new place. Can she make friends in this new place? You know, can she have any kind of stable relationship with this grandfather that she never knew about? Can he accept, you know, this huge amount of change into his life at the end of his life? Oh, it was so good. If I'm gonna recommend a book, maybe so far this year, I would probably recommend this one for people who are looking for that kind of experience and story. So this Every Shade of Happy by Felida Shrimpton. It was so good. I loved it. And then the last book that I finished, I only realized today, I thought I had finished a 4th book. I had like 20 minutes left in the audiobook and I had not finished it. So I finished it today on June 2nd. So darn it. But the last book that I did finish in May was Confessions by Kanae Minato. Wow. This was a 5-star, and if I'm going to recommend a second book, it's going to be Confessions. Okay, how do I describe this book? From the blurb on the back, you know that the main character is a middle school teacher whose young daughter, like 4 years old, was killed by some of the students of her middle school class. She's a teacher, a homeroom teacher for like, I'm going to say maybe 7th, 8th grade. And she brings her daughter to school sometimes. After school she gets dropped off from her daycare, and her daughter's murdered. So at the very beginning of the book, you learn this, and the start is the teacher on like the last day of class telling the story of how she figured out what happened to her daughter. And she knows exactly who killed her daughter. And you think, okay, well, why doesn't she go to the police? Okay, well, they explain that. And her revenge is letting the rest of the class figure out who the murderers are, their own classmates, and kind of letting them deal with that. And you think, okay, that's going to be it. Oh, that is not it. That is not it at all. Then after you see that part, she retires from teaching. She just wants to be out of it. And then another teacher comes in the next school year to take over. And then you start to see the perspectives of a couple of the different students through the class and their reactions to the revelation of having classmates basically who are murderers. And every point of view you get to, you're like, I know the whole story. I've seen it from start to finish. I know who's guilty. I know why they did it. I know how they did it. And then you see the next perspective. And you're like, oh, I was missing information. Now it's more clear. Now I know who did it. Now I know why they did it. Now I know how they did it. And then you see another perspective. And it's like it's like a picture that you think you see very clearly, and then it shakes a little bit, and it actually clarifies more, and you're like, oh, that's not a picture of a donkey, that's a picture of a house. And then it shakes again, and you're like, oh, that's not a picture of a house, that's a mountain. Every time you get a new perspective, you realize how little you know, and you have made very solid judgments on the guilt and the method and the motive on things. Now, the guilt of who did what is true. I mean, it's, from the beginning. But how they did it, why they did it, who else may have been involved or had some sort of play in it is, you think you know and you don't. And then, oh, the end. Okay, I'm not always a fan of twist endings because I think sometimes they're very poorly done. This ending, I did not see coming at all. I probably should have. I mean, now looking back, maybe I should have. I did not see it at all. This is the story of the most intricate revenge plan outside of the Count of Monte Cristo. But this is like a modern take on, you ruined my life? Okay, let's see what happens. I got chills, and I thought reading like the first perspective of the mother teacher who's relaying to her students, what happened. I was like, it's a 3-star. It's kind of written in a little interesting style because, she's just talking to like her class and you're, reading it as though you're sitting in her class. Okay. And then I read the next perspective and I'm like, yeah, 3.5. And then I read the next perspective. I'm like, oh, this is easily a 4. And then I read the next perspective. And by the ending, I'm like, 5 stars. 5 stars. I didn't see this coming. It was so good. The threads of fate that intertwine in these people is just, oh, it's so masterfully done. I thought this was absolutely phenomenal. So my 2 recommendations for this month are going to be Every Shade of Happy and Confessions. Go read those for sure. And then finally, I now have, just clearing my desk a little bit, I have a little book haul. So these are from 2 different bookstores. There's a used secondhand bookstore in a city near me. I don't do secondhand books, but I was looking for something very specific. I was looking for, I think, an old copy of The Count of Monte Cristo that I thought they had and I couldn't find, but that's okay. But they do have some new books, which is what I ended up getting. So I picked up it's not my first Murakami. It's my first physical copy. I had one Q84 on ebook and I really severely disliked it. I had some real problems with some of the themes and the way that he was handling some of the topics. So I DNF'd it. Also, that book's like a chonker. But I still want to give Murakami a chance. And so I got A Wild Sheep Chase by Haruki Murakami. And I also got After Dark. Look at the shine on these. Yes, you can see my ring light. These are super shiny. Super shiny metal. If you want to find a good nerd rap song, Super Shiny Metal by, what's the name? Optimus Rhyme. Yeah, Optimus Rhyme. Super Shiny Metal. Very good. So I got my 2 Murakamis. They're both new. And then I got a manga that really caught my eye. It's called A Silent Voice. And I'm going to read the back to you. Shoya is a bully. When Shoko, a girl who can't hear, enters his elementary school class, she becomes his favorite target, and Shoya and his friends goad each other into devising new tortures for her. But the children's cruelty goes too far. Shoko is forced to leave the school, and Shoya ends up shouldering all the blame. 6 years later, the two meet again. Can Shoya make up for his past mistakes, or is it too late? So there's the cover. I love the idea of this. I love the idea of a bully who kind of grows up and realizes that he was being just a little and that he really wants to atone for that, but dealing with the subject matter of, can you? Is it too late? Are there some things you just have to give that person space and never deal with them again, because sometimes you don't deserve to be reintroduced to that person's life. It can be done and over with. You can feel regret. You can grow from it as a person. That person doesn't have to accept you back. And that kind of seems to me like what this is going to be talking about. And it looks super cute. I mean, I just think the art style is kind of, you know, like along the lines of like what I typically like in like animes, because I definitely do way more anime than I do manga. But I just think that this is a really cool story. It reminds me thematically of, I think it's Komi Can't Communicate. Not necessarily with like the bully aspect, but communication challenges and making friends with that. And I think I would rather read the story of a bully who is trying to make amends versus like bully to lover sort of trope, where whether it be the girl or the boy in the story, are a bully and they're bullying the person who they kind of end up falling in love with, and they don't know how to communicate that, so they just keep bullying them, but they make a relationship out of it anyway. Like, I don't like that. I think it's a very toxic trait that people have, and I think it's a very toxic thing to promote as like a healthy, normal, oh, he's picking on you, that means he likes you, you should be nice to him. No. But this, I think, sounds like it's going to handle the material really well. So I'm really interested to read that one. And actually that's the first manga I've bought in like probably 10 years. I think it might be the second manga I've ever bought ever. The first one was like a Pokemon, because why not? So those are the ones I got from my secondhand bookstore. And then I don't even remember what the next pile is. I got this from Barnes & Noble, and these have just been sitting on a shelf until I had time to film this. Oh, right, okay. So I got The Stranger by Albert Camus. I thought it was Camus, and somebody's like, yeah, he's French, so it's probably Camus. This is for the Game of Tomes book club for the month of June. Thank goodness, because I am trying to get through the Brothers Karamazov, and I have gotten almost no reading done for May. That was supposed to be the book for May. So I'm so grateful that the comparison to the Brothers Karamazov is a tiny little bitty thing, because my goodness, that also reminds me I have that book that I have to grab. I also have no idea what this is about. Since it was first published in English in 1946, The Stranger has had a profound impact on millions of American readers. Through the story of an ordinary man who unwittingly gets drawn into a senseless murder on a sun-drenched Algerian beach, Camus explored what he termed the nakedness of man faced with the absurd. Okay. I mean, if you're comparing it to the Brothers Karamazov, yeah, the philosophy that surrounds murder and ethics and morality. Okay, that's cool. All right, so my next book, I feel like I'm talking at a mile a minute. I'm so sorry. Yukio Mishima's Spring Snow. There was a table that had like a lot of Asian, mostly Japanese books on it, which is like one of my favorite translated works to read. So I grabbed this one. It is 1912 in Tokyo, and the hermetic world of an ancient aristocracy is being breached for the first time by outsiders. Rich provincial families, unburdened by tradition, whose money and vitality make them formidable contenders for social and political power. Shigekuni Honda, an aspiring lawyer, and his friend Kiyoaki Mitsugae are the two sons of rich families. As they come of age amid the growing tensions between old and new, Kiyoaki is plagued by his simultaneous love for and loathing of the spirited young woman Ayakura Satoko. But Kiyoaki's true feelings only become apparent when her sudden engagement to a royal prince shows him the magnitude of his passion and leads to a love affair both doomed and inevitable. Doomed, inevitable, Japanese tales, sounds great. So far I've not missed with any that fall into that category. Okay, so the next one is Mieko Kawakami's Heaven. I don't even remember why I bought this. Let's see. With profound compassion and sensitivity, Mieko Kawakami has created a moving, revelatory portrait of two young people living in extreme circumstances. In Heaven, an introspective middle school student is subjected to systematic bullying by his classmates, and there's only one person seemingly capable of understanding his torment, a young girl named Kojima, who suffers a similar fate. Each finds solace in the other, but also a surprising new perspective on their predicaments. Apparently I'm into Japanese school kids being bullied? What is wrong with me? Heaven is a remarkably controlled and affecting novel on the theme of violence and the dazzling confirmation of Kawakami's standing as Japan's most insightful and exciting contemporary novelist. That sounds really good. I actually do really enjoy works that deal with violence and trauma and the effects of it, because I'm interested in that from like a true psychological and sociological standpoint. But I also like the dynamics of kids having to deal with it and how they deal with it. And culturally, bullying in different cultures is very, very different, and how bullying is dealt with by, you know, the adults and the authority figures as well as the kids themselves is very, very, very different culturally. And so I think coming from America, where a lot of times we're seeing it end in school shootings, you don't see that in other places, I think it's really interesting to learn more and more about how different cultures deal with these themes. And that is not to say that school shooters, mass shooters are always the victims of bullying or anything like that. But the perception of people feeling like outcasts and feeling like they're going to lash out, and instead of bullying, they use violence. And it's a reality that I've had to live with since I was in school, and so many more kids are having to deal with for so much longer of their lives because they're doing, you know, active shooter drills in flipping kindergartens and preschools. So thematically, it's something I am very interested in. So I can see now why I picked up these books. So that, my friends, is my little mini book haul and my May wrap up. 3 books down, 6 more added to my shelf. Oh, I have to get my 7th book actually. Okay, so I was supposed to get this from Barnes & Noble. They said they had it at my store and they lied. I was very upset. But I went to look for it when I got The Stranger, because these are going to be the 2 that are paired together with for May and June for the Game of Tomes. So I have already started reading it. I couldn't leave it for my book haul. I'm a little further than this because I've been having to do it through audiobooks, so I don't actually know where I landed in here. But I mean, look at this. Okay, so I will just say, for the Game of Tomes, Emma and Carolyn Marie Reeds were going to have a vote they were definitely reading the Brothers Karamazov, and the book they paired with it was going to be chosen by their viewers between 3 books: The Stranger, Jude the Obscure, and The Count of Monte Cristo. I was 100% down for The Count of Monte Cristo because I'm already planning to reread it. It is my favorite book. I will never shut up about it. I'm sorry. They ended up taking it off as one of the selections, and I don't even think they ended up doing a vote. I think they ended up just picking The Stranger. I was a little upset at first. Not like angry, but just very sad. Very, very sad. I rescind that. Because here. This is what would have happened had they left it up to the voters and had the voters voted The Count of Monte Cristo and the Brothers Karamazov. Look at what you would have had to have read. Now, granted, this goes incredibly fast. This is incredibly dense. This takes a lot of digesting. This is just a fun, action-packed romp. You can fly through this, in my opinion, while also having a lot of themes to dissect and digest. However, that's still a lot of pages. And I'm already into June and I've only gotten like an eighth of the way through or something crazy ridiculous. So, God, these are so big. So I'm very grateful that they ended up doing The Stranger instead. So thank you both, because I could not have handled it. I still need to film my my response video for The Catcher in the Rye compared to David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I have not gotten to that yet because between my life getting super crazy, I had a water leak sprung in the sink in the upstairs, and then within a half an hour my basement ceiling had collapsed into the water. A month later, it's still not completely resolved, still waiting on the insurance to allow us to get it resolved, so that's great. Just things have been happening, so I've not had any time. In every moment of spare time, I've been playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I regret nothing. So that, anyway, is my May wrap-up, my little mini book haul, and some semi-plans for future videos that you will hopefully see before too much longer. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Read Every Shade of Happy, read Confessions. They're so good. I cannot recommend them. I cannot recommend them enough. I really, really hope people read them, and I really hope people enjoy them as much as I did. So thank you so much for joining. Please take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Go out and get some sunshine. It's getting hot, but it's also getting beautiful out there. And I will see you in my next one. Bye.